So we're going to talk about sim theory from a philosophy standpoint again. How do you clear up this question about do we live in a simulation? So a lot of people online filling your head with propaganda, bad professor here, to take 30 years of academic philosophy experience and use it to translate for the masses, for the average person, what some of these ideas mean, especially when they're dumb and especially when they fill your head with propaganda. I made a video previously about sim theory, I think it was 2 days ago, and it was in promoting it like I do everything. And this one's going to be a little more debunking, which is to say it tells you a lot about knowledge and reality and what scientists are doing, what the language games and the propaganda are really doing. Me and my multiple personalities. So sim theory is basically a number of theories. One, that we live in a simulation. Two, that we live in a video game. And three, and more importantly and more out there on social media, confusing everyone, is the idea of layered sim theory. So what layered sim theory means is that you can create a simulation and that simulation can create a simulation. So this isn't new. This isn't like I'm telling you something groundbreaking. Everyone is saying it just like this right now to convince you of I don't know what. Layered sim theory means that each one of those simulation in turn creates another simulation, and this goes down the chain, and given billions of years of evolution you have, I don't know, thousands of simulations all down a chain. Because I'm going to tell you the secret. I'm going to tell you why this thing breaks down, why it's problematic, why it belongs in philosophy, and what you can do to clear it up. Because there's one really simple way to clear it up. I call it the consciousness distinction. The layered sims basically are offshoots of the sim above them, and our job as a social media propagandist, not mine, yours, is to tell you which one of those sims we are. So are we the base sim? Have there been no sims invented yet? We're the first. Are we somewhere down the chain? Are we at the bottom, which means we're the last sim that hasn't quite created its own sim yet? So if we're in the middle, I don't know what that means because it seems like we've already have created a sim at that point. So we'd be further along in our advancement. But the idea is that percentage wise, you're more likely to be somewhere in the middle than you are at the beginning and the end. Because if there's thousands, how likely is it you're the very first, the very last? It's a dumb kind of percentage based question, which is what all science is. And it's not when it's outside of science. And it's so theoretical and so abstract that to couch it in science language, like I've been saying for months now, is really where your problems start. Let's move on to the pandemic of pontification. And that is the problem with sim theory that I'm going to sum up really fast. And that is that there's two versions of sim theory that are out there, and most people don't know there's two. Most people don't know there's a distinction that I call the consciousness distinction in sim theory, which changes everything. And so this means that if you look at it one way, the consequences are different. If you look at it another way, it's night and day. So one is that the conscious creatures are part of the sim. And the other one is that the conscious creatures are dependent on the sim. What that means is in the first case, the conscious creatures are part of the simulation, which means whoever created the simulation, the person developing it has to know how to develop consciousness. So to create a full simulation, you have to simulate the environment and mind. The other one, the second one, the one I'm gonna tell you is a little bit overlooked when they come up with this propaganda shit online because clearly they're not understanding it because they're not talking about this the way I am right now because I'm such a smart genius. It is that the simulation is the environment only. So the consciousness and the independent consciousness, us, are victims of this simulation, which means we exist somewhere else. This is what the Matrix was about. This is the break between the Matrix metaphysics and today's metaphysics. And that is that in the Matrix, we lived in a toilet, or I don't know what we lived in. We lived in a vat, right? And so there was a thing, a consciousness, a brain only, whatever it is. In the Matrix case, you had a body and it had deteriorated. And that's why Neo had to exercise and come back from that real physical characteristics of his body. So that's a separate consciousness. And then the environment is created by the simulation. That's what the Matrix was. So the Matrix was an environment, not a mind. So the way we look at it today in 2026 and the distinction that we overlooked is the distinction that the simulation describes just environment or environment in mind. So this is the second part. We're talking about the role consciousness plays in simulation theory and how all of simulation theory reflects on the condition we're in now, trying to find some articulation of what the mystery is, what the God concept, what might look like for some people, For me, it's really the man behind the curtain, what's going on. I've always felt like reality was a little fishy anyway. But we're talking about consciousness. We're talking about the distinction. So in the first part, we talked about the distinction between the game designer designing the environment or designing the environment and the people. So the people, the individuals, if that's what you want to call them, scientists don't believe we have individuality. But if you are trying to conceptualize what part of the simulation the game designer is responsible, there are different kinds of simulations. There's the simulation where we're in a video game, the layered sim theory, which is what we talked about the most, and that is the dumb idea online, which is promoted because it sounds cool. And it is that there's a base reality which makes layered realities. Each simulation then advances to a stage where it is able to simulate a world, which that's a lot, bro. That's a lot. So again, all of these things are dependent on this idea of can you simulate consciousness? Because if not, you're just simulating the environment like in the Matrix. Unless I guess the aliens and Mr. Smith were in some way simulated. I don't think they were. They were conscious on their own planet. So no. The other one, which is really interesting, I wanted to kind of end the video around this. I want to end with hologram theory, which is another one that I want to do a whole video on, and that is another kind of sim theory. It is the idea that there's a 2D universe that is real and that it is projected like a hologram. That's why we have this 3D environment. We're talking about whether you can simulate consciousness at all. We're talking about whether if the 2026 version is that everything is simulated, the simulation, the layered simulation world that then creates its own world has to create the people in it. It has to create consciousness in order to populate that world, which again seems like an extra step. And my argument here in this video has been that that extra step is one that people are making and aren't super aware of. Because if they knew it, they'd probably be like, oh yeah, that's an extra step. You take the sentient beings that already exist and you're now implanting them into an artificial simulacral world like the Matrix. It's the environment, but then you're also going to have to decide where the intentionality comes from. Like, because I've always said we are living in a video game and it's for somebody's entertainment because of how dumb everyone is. Someone's got to be laughing in this Truman Show. And so you can see how you can construct these ideas. And all these ideas, hopefully, this is why I like sim theory, even though I don't believe it. It is that all these things contain elements of possibility, if not necessarily truth or materialism. They do contain a possibility. I've talked about how science reveals, and the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics reveals this idea that one of the best explanations for what's going on is that it resembles coding in computer games and game rendering. So it's certainly a possibility. For me, it's a possibility because my experience tells me that there's too much coincidence. Everyone gets on my ass for that. It's a little more nuanced than that because I'm so smart and great. And I think because I want to do a video on Andrew Mike Tyson Dyson, I think all of the talk we've had here in these two parts of this video and all the things about simulation theory that are interesting and all the things that really happen in philosophy, even though it's usually scientists, are derailed by people like Andrew Mike Tyson Dyson, who doesn't come to it with an authentic philosophy experience or expectation. Most scientists don't. They go in, they enjoy philosophy, they like being stimulated, they're in physics, which is already philosophy because it doesn't have any concrete rule-based systems, which is to say general relativity and quantum mechanics clash. And so whole another video again. Oh my God. So because of that, they can't pull physics together in a way that rules make sense. And this is why time and space have now devolved. Another video. My point is just think about this, but most importantly for the main thesis of the channel, think about how science and scientism gets in the way of having these discussions and how people like Andrew Mike Tyson Dyson and Brian Greene and Sean Carroll and all these people that put out these ideas that kind of stop it in its tracks and create the language game, keep us from having these discussions in a way that would be called real philosophy. So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for coming, and send somebody a bill, just not me.